Hey guys, I'm Pico, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly how to create your own secure email verification system in Django. It's gonna be fun! I want to make this video as quick as possible, but at the same time I want to make sure that whoever is watching does not feel like they missed something. So that's why I'll be starting from an empty directory. I'm going to call it email ver for verify. We're gonna open it in Visual Studio Code. Next thing we need to do is create a Python environment. And we gotta wait a bit. Alright, superb. So now that we have the .venv environment ready, let's go ahead and open new terminal. Now we can install Django. So pip install Django, hit enter. We have to wait a bit. While we wait, I would like to ask you to hit the thumbs up button if you like the content so far and to subscribe, because that really motivates me to make more videos. Thank you. Okay, now let's use the Django admin executable to start project. So Django-admin start project. And how about we call our project email ver pro for project. All right, let's hit enter. Okay, and here we have the scaffolding of our project. Yay. All right, let's cd into it. And let's use manage.py to run server. So py manage.py run server. Let's follow link. Ta-da! Okay, now let's disconnect server again and let's run migrations. Py manage.py migrate. Alright, so since the point of this video is to learn how to create email verification, let's begin by configuring our email settings so that we can send our users emails. So the first thing I would do is create a new file, and I'll call it .env. And that's where I would keep sensitive environment variables, such as the email address that I will use to send the info. I'm just gonna put in fake information for now. So fake@fake.com. And I'll also keep in my email's password, which will also be fake. And now in order to be able to use my environment variables in settings.py, I'm going to install python-dotenv. The command is pip install python-dotenv. I'm just gonna paste it and hit enter. And now in order to use environment variables, we have to import .env from load.env. And then we gotta load .env. Oh, and we also need to import OS. Okay, now let's scroll all the way to the bottom. And we wanna create variables to hold the email that we've added to our .env file. So os.environ.get, and we've named the email variable in our .env file mail in all caps. So we'll just get it. And now let's create a variable to hold our password. So same idea, os.environ.get, and we named the variable that holds our password, right? Yep. Okie dokie. And now let's configure our email backend settings. To do this, I always like to check the docs. So I'm just going to use Django's core mail SMTP. SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And I will be using Outlook to send my users emails. So my email host will be smtp-mail.outlook.com. Email port to 587. Email use TLS true. TLS stands for Transport Layer Security, and setting it to true indicates that we want to use a secure connection. Okay, and now email host user is our email. So mail, email host password is our password. So I'll set it to mail pass. And finally, we want to add default from email, and we want to set it to mail. Next up, we're going to create a new file in our project directory, and we're going to call it tokens.py. And yes, you've guessed it, that's where we're going to define our token generator function. Our token generator function is gonna inherit from Django's password reset token generator. So let's quickly import it. So from django.contrib.auth.tokens import password reset token generator. And now let's define account activation token generator, which inherits from password reset token generator. Now let's define method make hash value self user timestamp. We want to return a hashed string with our user's primary key and the timestamp, as well as the active status of our user, whether they're active or not. And now let's define variable account activation token, and let's set it to account activation token generator. Okay, super cool. Now that our account activation token generator is ready, that makes it a good time to create our registration form class. So let's create a new file and call it forms.py. And our registration form is going to inherit from the user creation form. So let's import it. So from django.contrib.auth.forms, we want to import user creation form. And of course, from Django, we want to import forms. We want to also import our user model. So from django.contrib.auth.models import user. And we're also going to need to import validation error. So from django.core.exceptions import validation error. Now let's define our registration form. So class registration form, and like we've said, it inherits from user creation form. And we need an email field. So email equals forms dot email field, and we want to make it required. Let's define class meta, right? Our model is user model, yay. Okay, and our fields are username, email, password 1, and password 2. All right, and we need to make sure that our users cannot use the same email more than once. So a user cannot register with the same email. So in order to do that, let's create a method. How about we call it clean email? And now we want to get a hold of the email. So self.cleanData.get email. All right, and now let's add an if statement. So if user.objects.filter email equals email exists, then we want to raise validation error and say an account with this email address already exists, right? And we want to return email. All right, and now let's create our views. Let's create a new file and let's call it views.py. Okay, how about we begin by defining our registration view. I'm going to call it register user. and takes in request as a param. Now let's create an instance of our registration form. Of course, for that to be possible, we are gonna need to import our form. So from forms, import registration form. And now we can create an instance of our form. And then we want to check if the request method is a post method. So if request.method is post, then we want to bind the form to the submitted data. So form registration form request.post, and we want to check if our form is valid. If the form is valid, then a new user instance is created using the form data. So form.save, we want to set commit to false, and we initially want to set user is active to false as well. Finally, we want to save that. Okay, so by doing so, our user is saved to the database. However, activation is pending. Now, after saving our user, we want to create an activation email. So in order to be able to do that, we are going to need get current site. So let's import it from django.contrib.sites.shortcuts import get current site. All right, so let's create a variable current site and set it to get current site request. So this gives us the current site's domain. All right. Now let's add in mail subject and set it to, let's say, activate your account. And our message, we want to render it to string. So let's import render to string from Django.template.loader. Import render to string. All right, so message render to string registration slash account underscore activation underscore email dot html. And this is an HTML file that we have not yet created and we will be creating in a moment. Right, let's add a comma. And now let's add in our user's data. So user domain, current site domain, UID. We're gonna wanna use URL safe encode base 64. So let's also import that. So from Django.utils.http import URL safe base 64 encode, and we also want URL safe base 64 decode, and we also want to import force bytes. So from Django.utils.coding import force bytes. UID will be URL safe base 64 encode. We're gonna use force bytes to encode our user's PK. All right, next, our token. We've already defined our account activation token, so let's import it. So from tokens, import account activation token, and our token would be account activation token dot make token user. All right, and we want to send the email to the user's provided email. So let's create a variable and call it to email, and we want to get the email from the form. So form dot lead data dot get email, and our email should be set to email message, which we should import as well from django.core.email. So let's import it. So from django.core.mail import email message. And our email message will have the mail subject and the message, and it will be sent to our email that we've just set above. Right, and then we want to send the email, so email send. And then once the message is sent, we want our users to see a message. And so message success. Actually, for this to work, we have to also import messages. So from django.contrib import messages. All right, so let's go back here where we were typing. So messages.success request, and our message should say, please check your email to complete the registration. And we want to redirect to our index page, which we have not yet created also. And we'll be creating it pretty quickly. Okay, now we want to return render request and registration/register.html, which we still haven't created, and we want to pass in the form. All right, have I not imported render? Oh, maybe I haven't. Right, so let's import render from Django.shortcuts import render. Oh boy, and also redirect. All right, now let's quickly create an index page. Def indexed request, and we'll be passing messages to our index page. So let's create variable index. Let's create the variable messages to display, and let's set it to messages.getMessage, and it takes the param request. Right, and we want to return render request index.html, which we haven't created yet, and we want to pass in the messages. All right, cool. All right, now let's define our activate view. Let's put it under our register user view. Let's call it activate, and it takes the param request as well as UIDB64 and token. Now we want to get a hold of our user. To do that, we'll use the method getUserModel, which we have not imported, so let's import it. So from django.contrib.auth import getUserModel. Right, so now we can set user to getUserModel. And now we wanna try to decode our user ID from base 64. So try UID would be force_string, which is a method we also need to import. So let's import it, force string. All right, so we want to try force_string and then URL save base 64 decode. And what we want to try to decode is the passed-in user ID. All right, and next up, we want to try and get the corresponding user from our database. So user would be set to user.objects.get. PK is UID. Now let's add an except block, and we want to catch several exceptions in case there are issues with the process. So I'll add in type error, value error, overflow error, and user does not exist. And here we want to set our user to none. If our authentication is successful, then we want to set user to active. So let's add an if statement, and it will check if user is not none, and account activation token dot check token user token, and we want to set user to active, so user.active would be true, and we want to save the user, so user.save, and then we want to log our user in, so login. I guess I also need to import login. I guess we can import it from here, right? Yes. So login request user. And then we want to add a success message. So message.success request. You can say your account has been successfully activated. Yay. And then we want to return redirect reverse login. Have I imported reverse? I guess not. So let's import it. So from Django.urls import reverse. This one should be messages. What am I doing? Something is wrong. Have I imported? Oh, I didn't import login properly. All right, so yes, now login works well. Else messages dot error request, and we want the message to say activation link is invalid or expired, and we want to return redirect our users to index. All right, now let's go to our urls.py to define the URL patterns and map them to our views. Let's delete this part and let's create the path to our index view. Of course, for this to work, we're gonna need to import it. Actually, let's just import all of our views. Now let's quickly create the URL pattern for our register page. So path accounts slash register slash u is register user name register. Okay, and now let's create the URL pattern for our activation email. So activate slash string UIDB64 slash string token. We end it with a slash. All right, and our view was activate, and the name is activate also. All right, and let's also add the URLs from Django's built-in authentication system, so we can quickly create a login page and so on. So accounts. Oh, I didn't import include. So include Django.ontrip.auth.urls. All right, and now let's create a templates directory. Let's create it in our root folder. So templates. Okay, and in order for Django to be able to find our templates, let's tell it about its location by going to our settings.py, and where we have templates defined, where theirs is, we're going to add base there slash templates. All right, now let's go back to our templates directory. And let's create a new folder and call it registration. And that's where we're gonna be keeping our authentication related templates. And let's also create a file outside our registration folder and call it index.html. And another one that will call base.html. And that would be our layout file or our base file. All right, let's begin by adding some HTML boilerplate. And where the title is, we want to create block title. And let's set a default title for our page and call it email ver. Okay, and within our body, let's just create another block and it will be our block content and block. All right, and now let's go to our index.html and let's extend our base.html file and let's add block content. I always like to type end block right away because I'm afraid of forgetting to write it later. Okay, and you guys remember we wanted to display messages. So let's add form message in messages and let's create a div element to keep our messages. And let's give it the class message and add in message.tags. This way we'll be able to style the tags according to the type. And then we want to show our message. And of course, we gotta end our for loop with and for. Okay, and it would be cool if we could tell whether our user is authenticated or not. So let's add an if statement that would say if user is authenticated, then we want to say welcome and then have user.username. We say thanks for logging in. This way we'll know if we're logged in. And else we want to see welcome new user, please log in. And then we can add a link to our login page. So URL login. And it should say login. And maybe our user is not registered. So let's add another link tag. And to a link to, oh, I forgot the quotation marks. I always do this. Okay, in here. Also quotation marks. Don't forget the quotation marks. Okay. URL register. And it should say register. Okay, and then we want to end if. Oh, I kept this inside the div for the messages, which is not what I wanted to do. So let's put the div up there before the end for. And actually, let's create a new div and give it the class center. And yeah, I still have not decided if I will be adding CSS styling or not, but just in case, it's good to have classes ready. And now let's go to our registration directory and create a new file. And let's call it register.html. And the first thing we want to do is, just like we've done in our index.html, we want to extend base.html. And we also want to get hold of our block content. Okie dokie. And now let's also add in div with the class center. And we want to create a form element with the method post and action URL register. We want to add a CSRF token. And we want to render our form as P. All right, and then let's add a submit button. Button type submit. And our button should say register because this is where users will register. Let's also add block title and have it say register. Okay, let's create a new file and call it login.html. And that would be our login page. And I'm just going to copy the code from our register.html and just put it in the login.html. And I'll change block title to say login and the button to say login instead of register. And of course, the method should be also changed to URL login. All right. And now let's create another file. And this file will be our activation email. Actually, I forgot what I called it. So I'll go back to views.py. Yes, we've called it accounts_activation_email.html. So I'm just going to copy the name and make a new file. Here it is. And let's just write our email. We want to say hi, and then we want to get our user's username. So hi user dot username. And then we want to say here is the activation link. And now let's construct our activation link. So it'll be HTTP domain and then URL activate and then UIDB64 equals to UID. And the token is token. All right, and now let's add UIDB64 and set it to UID, and token, let's set it to token. And now if we run server and check our website, we're supposed to see our index page and registration page, login page, all of that, and hopefully our activation email should work. But before we try it, let's go to our settings.py and let's add the line login underscore redirect underscore URL equal between quotation slash. And that's because we want users to be redirected to the index page once they log in. By default, Django redirects logged in users to accounts/profile, which we have not created. All right, and since we are in settings.py, how about we also tell Django where to find our statics directory, which we have not yet created, but we will be creating to keep our styles.css file. So let's add static files theirs, and let's set it to base there, comma, static. Okay, and now let's run server. So py manage.py run server. All right, here's our index page. I'll hit register and I'll try to create a new account. Let's make our username Pico. And I'll add in a real email address to see if verification works. Now password. Right, let's click on register. All right, awesome. We were directed back to our index page and we see the message, please check your email to complete the registration. Of course, we can use CSS to style our message and give it a different color, and maybe we'll do that in a bit. Now I'll check my email to see if I received the message. Okay, maybe it's in spam. Yeah, here it is. Okay, it says, hi Pico, here is the activation link. Right, let's click on it. And we were redirected to the login page. So I'm just going to try to log in. Right, Pico and the password. Okay, log in. Yay, it says your account has been successfully activated. And we are logged in. It says, welcome Pico, thanks for logging in. Cool. How about we see if we can style our messages. So I'm going to create a new directory and call it static. Within it, I'm going to create a new directory, call it CSS. And within this directory, I'll create styles.css. All right, and now let's just add some styling. For example, I'll start by changing the font family to sans serif and I'll add some styling to the body. I'll make display flex, align items center, justify content center as well, height 100 VH, flex direction column. All right, and now let's add styling to our messages. So message.error, let's make the color red, and for message success, let's make the color green. All right, actually, I remember that when we were redirected to the login page, I did not see a message. So I'm guessing I forgot to add a message block. So I'm just going to do that now. I'll just copy it from our index.html and I will paste it here. All right, and now if we want to see the styling we've added, we have to go back to our base.html and add the line, load static, and then we need to link to our CSS file. So let's add the link tag, link rel style sheet type text /css and href static css /styles.css. All right, so now hopefully when we refresh, we will see our style changes. And yay, our center div is in the center. And now I hope that when we register again, we will see changes in the color of our messages. So I'm going to try to create a new account real quick. I'll call it Pico2 and I'll add in a real email address and I'll hit enter. The success message is green. And now if I go and try to check my email, yes, here it is. Okay, click on the link. And yay, here's our message and it is green. That's cool, right? Now let's see what would happen if we click on an invalid link. The message is red. We did it. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again, have a lovely day and see you soon. Goodbye.